The question is, how do you create a go-to-market strategy for sales and for investors? And the reason that I have divided that up is because they are principally the same, but they're presented differently when it comes to who you're going to be using this go-to-market strategy for. In other words, there's a go-to-market strategy that you implement as a company, but then you also have a go-to-market strategy in a slide that you show to investors. And it's important to distinguish. And we are going to take for granted that this is a new startup and that you're starting from scratch. And there are a few key words that I'm going to get you to look at and to think about, which is very important. And these are the basic words, and not to go too deep into each of them, but you want to be studying and you want to know your vocabulary. So the first thing that you need to do is figure out what is your unique value proposition. So that's the first step. The unique value proposition is going to be based upon what you have already tested and you know that customers are looking forward to. So I'm taking for granted that this is validated. You want to make sure we are validated. Then after, what you do is you take your unique value proposition and you figure out what is your ICP. What is that ICP? That is the initial customer profile or the ideal customer profile. And remember, there is a difference between ideal, or could be, not always, ideal versus initial. Because a lot of people say my ideal customer is so-and-so with this amount of money and so on, but you're not ready to talk to your ideal customer. You need to talk to your initial customer profile. And how do you determine that? Just like this question that we got, how do I attract early adopters? You have to identify your early adopters first. So what happens is you've got this thing called the innovation adoption curve like this, and many of you have seen this, and it gets broken up, right? And here are your innovators. This is you. These are the people who are willing to do innovative things to solve their problems. Most likely, it's the founder, and they are not the best people to try and sell to. And founders make this mistake all the time. What they do is they talk to other people just like them who are innovators, and then everyone says, yeah, I'd love that solution. That's great. But they're not good market to talk to. This part right here is the early adopter, and that's where you want to focus. In here is the early majority, and you don't want to focus on them. And then this is the late majority, and then here are the laggards. You want to make sure that you are focused here. So what you do is you develop an ICP describing your early adopter. What situation are they in? What are their behaviors? What pain points are they experiencing before they can become an early adopter? How open are they? Why are they open, etc.? Let me give you an example of an initial customer profile versus an ideal one with early adopters. I have a venture and we want to talk to CEOs. Initially, we're like, oh, we want the HR department. Horrible. Selling the HR department, they are the late majority. They move so slow. We're like, no, that's not going to work. So who are the early adopters? Well, then we got to CEOs. We want CEOs that are early adopters. And not all CEOs are early adopters. They might be early majority. They might be laggards. And so we found out new CEOs of companies within their first 30 days are early adopters. That's it. And then we decided the company needs to be, 200, at least 200 employees or 100 and above, making this amount of revenue. They're in this industry. And we said, this is the behavior. This is the archetype of the decision maker in the early adopter. It could be anything. New moms, first kids, not just moms, if you're doing B2C. So you need to establish an ICP. Then what you do is you use what's called a bullseye method. This is your go-to-market strategy. And your bullseye method is this. So first you brainstorm every single way that you could reach target market, your early adopter, your ICP. You brainstorm every way. And then what you do is you decide to experiment with 1 to 3 channels or ways that you're going to do it. And then when it works, you put it right in the center. This goes into the bullseye. Now, through this entire process, so we have step 1, step 2, step 3. Step 3, you are getting customers. You're making money in these steps. This is where the magic happens, everyone. You basically explain the bullseye, which is step 4, to investors. The investors want to know how you got to the bullseye method, how you got to the center that actually is working with your metrics you want to show with the results, okay? The problem is so many founders, what they do is they communicate only step 1, 2, and part of 3, the brainstorm. They show investors, oh, this is what we brainstorm. We're going to use Facebook ads. We're going to go viral. We're going to do content marketing. We're going to use influencers. But there's no insight. There's no insight to the strategy. So investors are going, you haven't figured this out yet. I don't want to give you my money to figure it out because it's going to go black hole. If you can show investors, hey, we brainstormed this, and guess what? For every dollar we experimented with, we got $1.50 or $2 out from using content marketing. That's what goes into the go-to-market strategy slide. So this is the slide right here. That is pretty much as simple as I can make it. Let's review. Step 1, do your UVP. Step 2, ICP. Step 3, brainstorm the bullseye method. There's a book called Traction. We make everybody read it, but by Weinberg and Mares. These are DuckDuckGo guys. And then once you get to the bullseye after experimentation, you put that in your go-to-market slide. You tell investors with metrics and the results, and you say, look at our growth. It's 10% week over week. That's how you do a go-to-market strategy. Now, there are some key things here. It takes commitment and discipline, and you have to win the marshmallow test every single day. What is the marshmallow test? It was an experiment where they gave a child a marshmallow, put it on the table, and the scientists left the room. And if the child was able to resist the marshmallow, they said, if you cannot eat the marshmallow, we'll give you 2 marshmallows later. And they correlated that the people who could pass the marshmallow test, what they ended up doing was they achieved more success. It was a predictor of long-term success because it's delayed gratification. How does that apply to go-to-market strategy? Too many founders go out and they don't pass the marshmallow test. They said, I'm just going to eat the marshmallow. I'm going to spend the money. I'm not going to think about the steps to do UVP, ICP, validation, conversations. And then by the end of it, they're usually wasting money and they're burning money and they run out of runway and then they have to go talk to the investor. And then they tell the investor, we burned through all our runway. I have to raise money because we haven't been able to make any sales. Well, pass the marshmallow test and do things properly to get to the point where you can tell the investor and work with your customers that since we did all this upfront work and we were willing to go slow and validate to eventually grow fast and scale, that has been our success. That works for customer acquisition because you can fine tune it, you can optimize, and that works for investors. Investors love to hear that story. That's how you do a go-to-market strategy. And we've got lots of other videos. So appreciate that question. And if you have more questions, let us know. Do the YouTube thing, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. We're here every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, answer these questions.